Welcome to the Voice of College Football and our coaches' rankings that we present each and every off-season. Please like the video, share the videos out on social media, and subscribe. Hit that bell for the notifications to know when we go live. We are ranking the coaches based on their performance right now. For example, if we went back 10 or 15 years and ranked Joe Paterno and Bobby Bowden based on their performance at the end of their careers, they did a decent job, but they were nowhere near their prime. It's not a legacy rating, but at the same time, we have to take into consideration that if a tremendous coach, stellar coach, has a down season, he's not going to plummet all the way to the bottom of the list. So there have to be considerations made. And of course, this is a difficult process because record isn't everything. The resources at Northwestern aren't the resources and the advantages at Ohio State, for example. So we take it all into account, and we present our Power 5 coaches rankings. We will do the group of 5 as well. We take our first third from number 69 all the way up into the 40s. Let's look at it, starting with a couple of Virginia coaches down at the bottom of the list. Tony Elliott at Virginia did not have a good season in his first day in Charlottesville, coming from Clemson as offensive coordinator there. Offensive coordinator, I said. Well, he took a great passing offense at Virginia and Brennan Armstrong, and he turned it into one of the worst passing attacks in football. They went from number 1 in passing yards per game. They produced points, touchdowns. Brennan Armstrong went from 31 touchdown passes to just 6 last season. Tony Elliott with an awful season with the Cavaliers, but he's just starting in Charlottesville. He is number 69. Just one spot ahead of him is Brent Pry of Virginia Tech. Comes to the Hokies from his defensive coordinator stay with Penn State. Keep in mind that he is inheriting the worst roster in Blacksburg since going back to the early days of Frank Beamer. Virginia Tech lost to Old Dominion. Virginia Tech played better down the stretch. They were competitive in most games in the ACC. Brent Pry's got a lot of work to do. He's at number 68. At number 67, we go to Purdue and a newbie in Ryan Walters. So how do we handle these situations? Well, we basically give them a neutral grade. Ryan Walters has never been a head coach. For new head coaches to Power 5 programs that have Group of 5 experience, we take that into consideration. But for Ryan Walters, he comes from Illinois, did a remarkable job there with a defense that ranked number 1 in most metrics across the board in the country. Comes to Purdue, we give him a neutral ranking, which means Brent Pry and Tony Elliott through their first seasons at their respective stops did not do a good job. At number 66, Kenny Dillingham. We rate him above Walters because we're also making a projection of sorts for 2023 and beyond. Kenny Dillingham at 32 years old did a fine job with offensives. Dillingham did a fine job handling offenses at Florida State to a certain extent. They upgraded late in his stay there. And then at Oregon, at number 66, we got Kenny Dillingham, Arizona State. One spot ahead, we stay in the Pac-12. We go to Troy Taylor, taking over for 2 respected coaches, Jim Harbaugh years ago, who handed it at Stanford to David Shaw, who maintained excellence. Then Stanford basically became an 8-4 program for a few seasons and then really tailed off and went off the rails in the past few seasons. So Troy Taylor trying to fix things at Stanford and did a nice job at his latest stop. At number 64, we've got Clark Lee of Vanderbilt, who is building the greatest program in college football. That's what he tells us. Well, they definitely took steps in the right direction with wins late in the season against Florida. Yep, beat the Gators. Also beat a good Kentucky team. How about that? Well, Clark Lee's got a lot of work to do, but winning 2 games in the SEC for the first time since 2018 is a great step for Clark Lee in breaking a 21-game losing streak in the SEC. Clark Lee at Vandy, number 64. At number 63, we go to a coach that at the time that he was hired in Cal Berkeley, I thought this is a tremendous hire. He's one of the best defensive minds in college football. He was taking over a deplorable defensive situation that was handed to him by Sonny Dykes, but he's not winning. And even when the Pac-12 was down, which, of course, the league was upgraded this past season significantly, but even before that, could not win anywhere close to like 35% of his games in the Pac-12. Talking about Justin Wilcox of Cal. Look at the record there. It is not getting any better at Cal Berkeley, but Justin Wilcox maintains his job, gets another shot in 2023, but right now, the 63rd ranked coach in the Power 5. At number 62, we go to a coach with one win, one significant win in a difficult situation. Zach Arnett, of course, had to take over the Mississippi State football program in the wake of Mike Leach's passing. And so he had to rally the football team, get them motivated, first decide, the administration did, that they would actually play the bowl game against Illinois. They went out there, they performed, and pulled out a win against a solid Illinois team. So mark one up for Zach Arnett. His defensive teams at Mississippi State were decent. This past one, 34th in the nation, actually rather good in yards per play given up. So Zach Arnett takes over at Mississippi State. He's got a huge opportunity in the SEC Western Division. At number 61, Brent Key at Georgia Tech. He took over for Geoff Collins, of course, who failed miserably in Atlanta. Brent Key immediately improved things with a couple wins against some decent football teams in Pitt and Duke. They finished strong at Georgia Tech. Brent Key doing a nice job there. It's still a monumental climb to get back to respectability and postseason play or any type of relevance in the ACC. But Key finished at 5-7 in his first season at Georgia Tech. And number 60, we go to a guy considered to be one of the bright young coaches in college football at BC, Jeff Hafley. In 2021, it was the tale of Phil Jurkovec getting injured early, and really BC had nowhere to go after that. Jurkovec came back late in the season, but all was lost. This past season, Jurkovec was challenged by Emmett Moorhead, the backup quarterback. Jurkovec also got hurt. Hafley had a rough time mounting offense again at Boston College, but Jeff Hafley still trying to make his way at BC after 6-18 the past two seasons. We shall see what Jeff Hafley is able to build at Boston College with light resources and not a good recruiting footprint. But of course, it's been proven in the past you can win at BC. But can you win at Indiana? Tom Allen is trying to prove that, and for a couple seasons, it looked like he was doing exactly that. 6-2 in the COVID season with a near upset in Columbus over Ohio State, who made the national championship game. And of course, the season before that, inches away from going 9 wins as they blew a 2-touchdown lead in the Gator Bowl. So Tom Allen also posting the best recruiting hauls ever at Indiana, but the last 2 seasons have been deplorable. 2-10, no wins in the Big Ten 2 years ago, followed by another bad season at Indiana at 4-8. Tom Allen trying to climb his way back out of the hole at Indiana after 2 decent seasons. At number 58, we go to a guy who achieved in the group of 5, of course, at Troy in Neal Brown. But at West Virginia, it's been a rough go after a pretty successful first season in 2020. Neither the offense nor the defense has performed up to expectation. He's looking for a quarterback after the JT Daniels experiment failed last season. Couple losing campaigns. They at least made a bowl game in 2021, something that they could not accomplish this past season in losing to Kansas, as Neal Brown's teams competed for the most part, but couldn't win. So he's on the hot seat, you would think, in Morgantown. Neal Brown at number 58. To number 57, and a coach moving from the ACC to the Big 12 after a marginal stay at Louisville. That, of course, Scott Satterfield, just one game over 500 at Louisville as the head coach there. Took over for Bobby Petrino. His initial splash was good. He took a 2-10 team, made him an 8-5 bowl winner, but marginal showing since then, and not necessarily the best of reports concerning Satterfield's handling of the program and the respect that he's gained there at Louisville. Now he heads to Cincinnati. Difficult show to follow there in Luke Fickell. Now to number 56 and Washington State's Jake Dickert. What a job he did 2 seasons ago in the midst of the COVID year of 2020. He was the defensive coordinator. Then, of course, Nick Rolovich ousted after a vaccine policy issue, and also a number of the coaches and the coaching staff. Did that happen during the offseason? No, it happened 5 or 6 games into the season. Jake Dickert took over the football team mid-season, right before a game, and the team performed extremely well for him. This past season, 7-5 in the regular season. Poor performance in the bowl game against Fresno State, but Jake Dickert doing nice things at Washington State, despite the obvious disadvantages in recruiting and resources there in Pullman. Okay, now we go to a coach that you could rank at number one if you believe the hype, or you could rank him last if he rubs you the wrong way. That's, of course, Coach Deion Sanders. Primetime. Comes to Colorado. Seems like an interesting spot for him. A guy that obviously has his roots at Florida State and in the South. Comes to Colorado, and he is immediately drawing attention, but he's also drawing really good, talented young football players, both through the transfer portal and through recruiting. So Colorado has suddenly become a player on the national scale in recruiting both veteran players and high school players. And, of course, he won at Jackson State. You can't deny him that. Whether he was the guy that pulled the trigger all over the place or received a ton of support, I think it's very important for him to have a veteran coaching staff as he is still making his way, and especially his first job in the Power 5 is a huge leap for him. But, man, he draws attention. This is a boom or bust hire, but it was worth it. I call this a good hire for Colorado. Go for it. And Deion Sanders will definitely go for it, and he's off to a great offseason start. Talk to West Virginia football fans, and their opinions run the gamut on one Dana Holgorsen, of course, the current head coach at Houston. He did accomplish some good things at West Virginia, of course, highlighted by that stomping of Clemson in the 2011 Orange Bowl with 70 points scored behind Geno Smith. But the tenure did not end well. He's not known as a good recruiter. He goes to Houston, where he's got football players all over the place, and he might be able to start recruiting them to play and stay home at Houston because they're now a member of the Big 12. He had a nice season 2 years ago in losing just one game, finishing in the top 25, and they won their bowl game this past season. Houston's Dana Holgorsen at number 54. I don't know why Maryland hired Mike Locksley, but he's starting to disprove me. He got off to a bad start at Maryland after an awful stay at New Mexico State, where he won like one football game and had several off-the-field issues. I don't know what got him the job, a head coaching job in the Power 5 in the Big 10, but he's starting to turn things around at Maryland. He inherited a pretty good roster, especially in regards to speed and athleticism that was brought in by DJ Durkin. He has added a defensive mindset. Maryland's actually playing some defense these days, and of course, he has improved the team from a 3-9 campaign the season before the COVID year. They only played 5 games in 2020 due to the pandemic, and then 7-6 with a bowl win, 8-5 with a bowl win. They've won back-to-back bowl games for the first time in forever at Maryland. He won the first bowl game that they had won since 2010, 2 seasons ago, and their first winning season since 2014. Mike Locksley suddenly doing a nice job at Maryland, and we will see if they can now break through that upper tier in the Big Ten Eastern Division. On to number 52, and we go to Mizzou and Eli Drinkwitz. Now, if you were just going to maybe have an adult beverage with a guy and wanted to shoot the breeze for a couple hours, this guy is your guy. Every time I see him interviewed, he's nothing but fun. He's got to win more, though. 6 and 7 seasons, not doing it for me or anybody else at Mizzou. They lost another bowl game, this time to Wake Forest. They had a pretty embarrassing loss as a double-digit favorite 2 years ago against Army. You can win at Missouri. Maybe not challenge Georgia, not win SEC championships, but get to more like 8 and 9 win campaigns. Eli Drinkwitz has now had a pretty substantial stay in Columbia, and we're not seeing it. Typically bad defenses. And he's got to find himself a quarterback, of course, at number 52. Eli Drinkwitz, Mizzou. We stay in the SEC Eastern Division. We go to Florida and Billy Napier. Okay, what a start he had in the swamp against the top 10 Utah team in pulling out a victory. Great start. Losing to Vandy in November, though. Coming off an enormous win, 38-6 over South Carolina. Up and down and all around. And, of course, Anthony Richardson's off to the NFL draft. Now, Billy Napier needs to either find or develop a quarterback among some questionable prospects in the likes of Graham Mertz and other candidates. So, Billy Napier coming off a 6 and 7 season. Of course, he's got to deal with this Jaden Rashada debacle that he had nothing to do with. But it looks bad for him, the program, and he's got to fight through it on a recruiting journey that takes him past Kirby Smart and Georgia. That's the standard. Florida and Billy Napier, you've got work to do. You're at number 51. Now we've made our way to the top 50, and a guy that really had a rough ride in 2022 based on the standard at the school and his predecessor. We're talking Oklahoma, Lincoln Riley, and now Brent Venables. So, just based on wins and losses, he posts the worst season for Oklahoma football since 1998. But there was more to it than that, of course. They lost all that offensive talent to Riley and USC. Brent Venables, what I was disappointed with, if he is truly a defensive guru, and I still believe that he is, the defense should have been much better. The defense actually got worse, and I understand he's got to bring in his players, which this is also a recruiting evaluation. As we rate these coaches, we are also looking at their performance on the recruiting path, especially if they're new to the job, and we're getting indication of where they're taking the program. And for Brent Venables, that's one of the thumbs up and one of the reasons why he's as high as he is on this list after a disappointing 6-7 season. Did play well in the bowl game, and again, the recruiting has been outstanding. But if you're a defensive guru, you take over defense, you take what you're given, and you should improve the defense even with marginal talent. All right, Brent Venables, Oklahoma could be a surprise team this season. Wink, wink. Put it in your back pocket. Remember that, back of your mind, Oklahoma. You heard it here first. Brent Venables at number 50. Now we go to a completely different situation with Jedd Fisch at Arizona. Took over a horrendous coaching job by Kevin Sumlin at Arizona. The wheels started to come off near the end of the Rich Rod stay there at Arizona. Sumlin did a poor job, and now we've got Jedd Fisch, who took it over, and he's completely revamped it, and they were one of the most improved teams in college football, going from 1-11 to 5-7, and competed heavily in the Pac-12 against just about everyone. They've got an offense, they've got a quarterback, and Jedd Fisch knows how to coach offense first and foremost. He's obviously building a team that believes it can win, and this should be another step forward for Arizona football in 2023. On to number 48, and a coach who is a bit curious to me, even though I root for him, I like him, and just about everybody shares the same feelings. Dino Babers. What is there not to like? You hear this guy interviewed. He seems like a respectable guy who earns respect in the locker room, cares about his players, does things the right way, but he just doesn't win many football games. He had his one breakout season in 2018. He's been there at Syracuse for 6 or 7 years now. 2018 was the height. He went 10-3. That was a bit of smoke and mirrors to a certain extent. If you really look at that team and how it performed, they didn't beat anybody of consequence. Okay, the rest of his tenure has been 4-8 and 5-7. This past season, they get off to a 6-0 start, and this is what really disappointed me about Dino Babers. They're 6-0. They just beat, I think, NC State. They were headed to Clemson. And basically, you're 6-0. You've got 2 or 3 wins down in the conference. You're going to Clemson. We know what the deal is. If you beat Clemson, you control the Atlantic. You can go to the ACC championship game. And you know what his first comment was? We're bowl eligible. And he's celebrating. Dude, you're going to Clemson to go take control of the division and get to the conference championship game. Bowl eligibility. You're 6-0. You didn't just go from 5-5 to 6-5 to get to postseason play. You are playing for something tangible at that point, something real, something relevant. That kind of disappointed me just in regards to this is where the mindset is for one Dino Babers. Mediocrity. But he's still, again, well-respected, cares for the players, does the right thing. And, hey, if he can get to bowl games at Syracuse, I know it's difficult to win big there, but 7-5 should pretty much be the standard, and he has failed at doing that most of the time. Dino Babers, we've got ranked at number 48. At number 47, we go to Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman. He is elevated from Cincinnati to Notre Dame to coach the defense. He coaches the defense for one season, then Brian Kelly leaves for LSU, and bam, Marcus Freeman's right there. Did Notre Dame jump too quickly to try to retain him? Was he ready for the job? Well, we saw indications that he's growing. You can't lose to Marshall. You can't lose to Stanford. Those are bad football teams. Well, Marshall's a good G5 team. Stanford's just a bad, awful football team. Notre Dame should not lose those games and lose them at home. Now, I believe they poured too much into the effort against Ohio State and then really had a letdown from there. But to Marcus Freeman's credit, he lost his quarterback in week 2. and they rebounded with a marginal quarterback in Drew Pine. They played much better. They took down Clemson. They, of course, won the Gator Bowl in exciting style against South Carolina. They played well against other teams. North Carolina, another ACC top-level team, they blew them out, controlled the game, dominated the game. Notre Dame was a much better team as they progressed throughout the season. Marcus Freeman is learning, of course, on the job. I give him credit for that. The number 47 coach in all of college football. At number 46, we go to a coach with very mixed results. He is Mel Tucker at Michigan State. Big 2021 season, of course, 11 wins, top 10 finish, won the Peach Bowl. Other than that, this past season was a big letdown. He has yet to fix the pass defense. So even when they went 11-2, the pass defense was one of the worst in the country. And he's a master, supposedly. The transfer portal did not get the defensive secondary or the pass rush fixed, and they were just as bad defending the pass this past season in losing 7 games. So a big downer for Michigan State this past season. Mel Tucker took over what was a declining program under Mark D'Antonio, so give him some defense for that. But after a big Kenneth Walker-led 2021, and that's the guy given a ton of credit for delivering those 11 wins, Mel Tucker has something to prove at Michigan State. And now we come to the conclusion of part 1 of our coaching rankings series. We've got Kalani Sitake of BYU at number 45. This will be intriguing. BYU, I always say this as I rank the schedules each and every year. They go out there and they will play anywhere, anytime against anybody. However, because they've been an independent, not the status of Notre Dame, it's been difficult for them to schedule games in October and November. They always have an odd schedule, a very strange schedule, a schedule that they can take advantage of against the likes of Utah Tech and Wagner and some of the bad Mountain West teams. However, now they're in the Big 12, so Kalani Sitake's team's going to have to bring it every week. He's had a decent stay there, typically 7 or 8 wins, with the one big season during the COVID year in which most of their Power 5 games were taken away, so they had a very light touch with Zach Wilson at quarterback. Kalani Sitake, will BYU be a factor? I think this is a fascinating discussion point and case example that we will see as we go into the 23 season. Out of Houston, BYU, UCF, and Cincinnati, who's going to be the most prominent? Because you can make cases for all of them based on their recent success. Again, these are our coaches' rankings right here at the Voice of College Football. Leave your comments down below. Where did we miss it? Part 2 is coming up with numbers 44 all the way up to number 21 right here at the Voice of College Football.